It is an absolutely beautiful Thursday morning here at the NovaCare Complex as we continue our coverage of Eagles Training Camp 2020 presented by Independence Blue Cross. Good morning, everyone. I'm Eagles Insider Dave Spadaro along with Fran Duffy, and we got a power duo right here. Connor Barwin, former Eagles linebacker, defensive end, 2013 to 2016, a Pro Bowler in 2014 when he had 14 and a half sacks. He is here on the left, and that's head coach Doug Peterson on the right. And there's quarterback Nate Sudfeld. Fran, we got a lot to talk about. Nate's the number 2 quarterback, buddy.
Nate's the number 2 quarterback. The sun is back out. The pads are back on. Excited for a good day of action here today at the NovaCare Complex, Dave.
Yeah, should be a good time. We've got a lot to get to in this next 20 minutes or so. We want to remind you that if you have not done so, do it now. Download the official Philadelphia Eagles mobile app. You can view all of the individual camera feeds right there in the palm of your hands. And we want to make sure that all Eagles fans in this region tune in to NBC 10 tonight. We re-air the 2018 wild card double doink game against the Chicago Bears. That's from 8 to 10 o'clock. Make sure you tune in and get some football action. You know, that was an amazing game. It was typical of Doug Peterson, right, Fran? He does the right things. He knows how to win games. The Eagles winning a pressure game in that 2018 playoff game at Soldier Field. And, hey, we look back, we look forward, and we look at the Eagles' offensive line, the big uglies. Eagles looking for some depth here.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those things we're going to watch certainly over the next couple of weeks, Dave, as the Eagles now, under 1 month away from the season opener against Washington. A lot of battles that still need to be had on the bottom of the depth chart, still trying to figure some things out. Who's going to be able to compete for the final 53-man roster, and who's going to be ready to go on the practice squad as well.
We see Carson Wentz, number 11, of course, and we have spotlighted the offensive line here a bit. I'd like to go back to that, particularly a player that head coach Doug Peterson singled out this morning, and that is 4th-round draft pick Jack Driscoll from Auburn University, a guard tackle. Fran Duffy, the Eagles are looking for depth. We know the starting 5 offensive linemen. Who is going to step up and replace Big V as that swing tackle? It could be Jack Driscoll.
Could be. He was a guy that I highlighted just a few weeks ago on my rookie film room series, which you can go and find on the Eagles YouTube page. And when you're talking about backup offensive linemen, versatility is absolutely key. You've got to be able to fill in. You can't just be a backup right tackle or a backup center. You've got to be able to fill in at a number of different spots. So when you talk about Halapoulivaati-Vaitai, when you talk about Matt Pryor, the guys that have filled that role over the last few years, they are guys that can do a lot of different things. And Jack Driscoll played right tackle at Auburn. He was a left tackle before that at UMass. He's played some right guard here in camp so far. Some people feel like he could be a center down the road. So this is a guy that's got great positional versatility. This guy right here, Jordan Mailata, has played both tackle spots here so far this summer. So again, these guys showing off that versatility. You need to have that if you're a backup along the offensive line.
If you are just joining us, welcome. It's a beautiful Thursday morning. I'm Eagles Insider Dave Spadaro. I'm not sure I made that clear at the top. I'm joined by Fran Duffy. I'm so excited today. Yesterday was a rainy, drizzly day. The pads were off. Kind of a walkthrough feeling. This today, I feel, Fran, will take the Eagles into the next phase of this training camp period. This is where you really, there's Brent Selleck, former Eagles tight end, who's here, part of the Eagles family. Brent Selleck, Connor Barwin, Jason Avant working with the wide receivers, Darren Sproles working with the running backs and the return game. Once an Eagle, always an Eagle. But, Fran, I do believe that today kind of really kicks off where the Eagles are going to focus on these last few roster spots and evaluate some of their young players. Tomorrow we expect live tackling, some live sessions. And today is going to be that ramp up into a really critical week or so.
Yeah, it's absolutely going to be critical over the next couple of weeks. And look, we had a little bit of that rain yesterday, like you mentioned. The humidity kind of dropped down a little bit. It was a little bit cooler. Even on Monday and Tuesday, it was a little bit on the cooler side. Humidity is going to start to rise up a little bit, and as that rises, I think the urgency and the intensity, you mentioned it's going to be hitting tomorrow. I feel like it's going to spike up a little bit. It's going to feel a little hotter out there over the next few days, both on the field and in the air as well.
I like the focus here on the offensive line.
Yeah.
because for the first time in so many years, the Eagles heading into a season have some changes up front. Andre Dillard, the first-round draft pick from 2019. The Eagles traded up to get him, and they felt that he was, as Howie Roseman said at the time, a top 10 talent. He takes the job at the left tackle position, and we hope for the next decade or so continuing a long line of success that the Eagles have had at left tackle. And then we've got on the right guard position, we've got Jason Peters making that transition from left tackle to right guard, and then the depth so important. So we are certainly keeping our eyes on the offensive side of the ball on the O-line. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Jalen Mills, the green looks great, the new number awesome, and he's also playing a new position, Fran, making the move from cornerback to safety. He seems like he's got a good grasp on it, but explain the differences in what the responsibilities are.
Well, you're certainly going to be a little bit more involved in the run game, and when you're playing corner, a lot of your stuff you're going to see in the run game is going to be out in the perimeter. You're going to be outside the tight end, outside the receivers. When you're playing safety, especially when you're closer to the line of scrimmage, you might be responsible for those gaps in between the center and the guard, between the guard and the tackle. You're dealing with bigger bodies, you're dealing with more traffic, so you've got to have a certain amount of comfort playing close to the line of scrimmage, as well as that physical toughness. So Jalen Mills absolutely brings that. And then you're also just looking for instincts. Things are happening faster when you're closer to the ball in the middle of the field. You have to be able to process things faster, diagnose what's happening, if it's run, if it's pass, no matter what. We've seen a pick six from Jalen Mills already. We've seen a number of tackles for loss. He brings that same energy that he brought to the cornerback spot. He seems to be taking it like a duck to water, man. It's been fun to watch over the first couple days.
Yeah, and he's got the luxury of playing next to Rodney McLeod, who we see there, who's been in the system. He's 5 years in, very respected leader on this football team. Rodney McLeod, number 23. There he is, smiling, talking, great communicator. And I think, Fran, that the big challenge, it seems, is not necessarily the physical part of it. It's the communication part and making sure that everybody is on the same page with all the checks that they make, all the adjustments that are happening.
And Rodney McLeod, a college corner at the University of Virginia, who made that move to the safety spot once he reached the NFL. So certainly Jalen has a little bit of a sounding board there with a guy who has made that transition to the safety spot himself. And you know another guy too, Dave, that I kind of took note of this yesterday during the practice, during that light action yesterday. Will Parks just seems like a guy that you want to have in the building, you want to have in that DB room, just always has great energy, whether it's defense, special teams. He seems like a guy that other guys seem to be kind of attracted to in that room.
I get the sense that, to kind of compare this to hockey, where players are flying over the boards, line changes, that's kind of the way, of course not to that extreme, that Jim Schwartz wants to play it in the defensive secondary, with all of these interchangeable parts. Who's in, who's out. Offenses look up, they don't know if Will Parks is in there coming on a blitz, or if Jalen Mills is dropping back in coverage, or if Avonte Maddox is on the edge at cornerback or playing on the inside. These are interesting pieces. The fact that the Eagles were able to make the trade for Darius Slay and then draft all of these versatile spot pieces, it gives them a dimension, friend, that they really just haven't had in the secondary since Schwartz has been here.
Yeah, and it can't just be one guy that's versatile in that secondary. It's got to be a group effort, because if you move one guy around, that means you're moving other pieces too. So when you talk about Nickel Roby-Coleman, who is lined up a little bit on the obviously on the inside, but also on the outside, Avonte Maddox has that skill set. Will Parks can line up everywhere. Jalen Mills can line up everywhere. It just gives you a lot of flexibility as a coaching staff with how you execute your coverages, how you execute your pressures in the game plan, and how you try and defend the opposing top receivers. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch how these guys are deployed this year.
We are live from the NovaCare Complex, our continuing coverage of Eagles Training Camp 2020, presented by Independence Blue Cross. An absolutely spectacular day. Great energy, beautiful weather. Doug Peterson, head coach, saying this morning, not concerned about any injuries. So that's a good thing. You certainly don't want to have any injuries. But the Eagles confident that these players who are hurt, Miles Sanders, we think Derek Barnett. We hope Javon Hargrave come back in time for September 13th against the Washington football team.
And that's the ultimate goal, right? You want to see everybody out here on the practice field, obviously, in this gear up to the season. But it's most important that those guys are ready for week 1 against Washington and have them ready for week 2, week 3, week 4 as this team tries to build something special and try and go on a run.
And we believe as we take a look at Avante Maddox, the little guy with the big heart and the big game, that he's the front runner at this point. That's our unofficial depth chart, Fran.
Yes.
To, start opposite Darius Slay. Now, what they're doing here, they're simulating tackle form, okay? Great technique is required. And we've seen this change in NFL training camps over the years, Fran. Back in the old days, back when I had the long hair and the wave and the mullet and all that, they were tackling 2 hours at a time on the every day. Now you've got to modify, and this is one way to do it, and it's a great drill. And you can just see how explosive NFL players are. It makes me laugh when I hear somebody say, oh, that guy sucks, that guy stinks. Well, when you see up close how fast and how explosive they are, you realize how dumb it sounds.
I said this yesterday on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, which, by the way, you can find wherever podcasts can be found. We're doing daily recaps of what we see on the practice field. I said it yesterday on the show. Without the pads yesterday, it kind of, the pads can be kind of an equalizer when it comes to like how big these guys look. Everybody kind of looks the same size. But when you take the pads off in a situation like yesterday, you could see like some of these guys are just, they're mutants. They're so much bigger than the rest of us, normal people. It's really something to behold, especially when you see it up close on the sideline.
It's interesting, Fran. I wouldn't say mutants. I would say genetically gifted.
Yes, that's what I mean.
But I mean, this isn't X-Men here. But when you really at the quarterback position, here's where you really see it. Carson Wentz is 6'5", 237. Nate Sudfeld is 6'6", 227. And then little Jalen Hurts. He's only 6'1", 223, so you really notice, and that's kind of an average size for a quarterback. I guess size really doesn't matter. It certainly doesn't matter in the case of that guy right there. DeSean Jackson in his 13th NFL season, and people say to me, well, how's he look? Well, I say he looks like DeSean Jackson. He looks like the fastest guy in the field, and the Eagles need that explosiveness. They lost him last year, and they really lost that vertical passing game.
All right. We all saw it in that Week 1 game against Washington with those 2 touchdowns in the second half, 50-plus yards on each of those catches, and you missed that vertical element last year. And so when you get back DeSean Jackson, you add in Jalen Reagor. Doug Peterson talked about Quez Watkins again today in terms of what he's done so far. Obviously, John Hightower drafted this year as well, who can also run. So the Eagles added some much-needed speed to this offense.
DeSean Jackson, an NFL high in the history of this great league, 24 60-yard-plus touchdowns in his career. I'm saying he's got several more of them left in it this year.
I would say so. You can throw tack on a few more there to what that total is. But as you can see, the tackling drills continuing here for the Eagles defense.
Yeah, and, honestly, these drills matter. And, there's the pose, too. That seems to matter also. Everybody wants to get their time in front of the camera. But clearly, look, you can't go beating up on bodies all day long. There goes the dancing. By the way, Fran, the dancing thing is, like, catching on. People are asking questions, talking about. I think our social media team has done such a great job capturing not only what's happening on the field here, but the spirit of the team, the camaraderie being built in this most unusual 2020 training camp presented by Independence Blue Cross. Some protocols for you. You see coaches wearing masks when they are not able to physically distance. That is extremely important. The Eagles have exactly 0 players on the reserve COVID-19 list. It's been a success around the league, so we're really excited about that as we get ready for this 2020 regular season. Players will be using towels. They are single-use towels, and they'll be sanitized immediately. Individual water bottles as well. What is this drill here? They roll out the big ball. Let's see what we got. Okay, are we scooping up footballs?
It's more about tackling. It's more about keeping their eyes up and still being able to attack a ball carrier from low to high. You see them wrap up, bring their feet and finish. So it really looks like they're just kind of going through a circuit here and getting guys to execute some different tackling drills.
Yeah, this is our live coverage that we have had all week, and we thank you all for joining us. We've had a great time opening up the curtain a little bit here and showing you Eagles Training Camp 2020 presented by Independence Blue Cross. And we want to remind you, for all of you Eagles fans in this area, all right, tonight on NBC 10, a re-air of the 2018 Wild Card Double Doink game against the Chicago Bears. That's from 8 to 10 o'clock tonight. Cody Parkey, whose picture is in the NovaCare complex, had a Pro Bowl season with the Eagles.
Yeah.
Really had his career derailed by hitting uprights all year. But what a wonderful game that was. What an intense game that was. I was on the field for it, and it was a remarkable conclusion. So check in NBC 10 tonight, 8 to 10. The Double Doink game for you.
Well, I was thinking about that, Dave, when you talked about like the celebrations and the guys dancing and like the culture that the Eagles have built here. And you go back to that game. You go back to some of the other games that will be broadcast on NBC 10 over the next couple of weeks, some of the great Eagles victories over the last couple of years. Those teams all had that personality, all had that kind of culture built, and that's what the Eagles are replicating here and trying to foster that kind of culture.
So we're going through a series of warm-ups here. The Eagles will break into individual in just a moment. They'll break into team in just a little bit after that, and unfortunately, we will have to end our stream at that time. But we are giving you a sense of what training camp looks like here at the NovaCare complex. And it really just looks like football, minus the fans. There are media members here, certainly physically distanced. Everybody is taking extra precaution here. And as Doug Peterson said this morning, the goal here is to get this football team to September 13th as healthy as possible, the best 53-man roster, the best practice squad roster. And, Fran, even beyond that, you're going to need an emergency list of players in the event that there are any COVID outbreaks.
Yep.
You're going to have to reach deep. This is a real challenge to every personnel department, to every pro scouting department. You have to just think of every possible scenario. You've got to have backups for every position, including, as we've already seen, the head coaching job.
Yeah, because not even just having that emergency list like you talked about, but bringing guys in for workouts during the course of the season. It's not like every other year where a guy could just come in and work out in the bubble on a Monday or a Tuesday and he's on the team the next day. They've got to undergo tests. There's a lot of things that go in, a lot of processes that go into that. So you have to have your guys ready, and that's why the versatile guys, the guys that you feel good about, that you know and feel comfortable with, they're going to have extra value here moving into this season.
We've got a good drill here up. If we can get over to the offensive line, where Jeff Stoutland is working some of his offensive linemen here in camera 3. There we go. So you see Jeff Stoutland, who, there's just no better offensive line coach. We'll let it breathe here and let you hear a little bit of him and the thudding of the pads. But it's all technique. And these guys didn't have the spring to work.
Yep. Dave, I did a segment with Coach Stoutland this summer. And it was a coach's masterclass, and he talked about some of the drill work that he does, and they rep the same thing over and over and over. And he said, as long as I am the coach here, we will do the same drills over and over and over, and that allows those guys to, once they get to the game, it's all just natural instinct. They're not thinking about what they're doing in the least bit.
And the Jeff Stoutland audible. We've got some audio of him he's a nonstop, yeller and screamer, quite frankly. You won't want to miss that. Make sure you check that out on PhiladelphiaEagles.com. Our social media channels, as well as our official app, as we take a look at the offensive line, a critical group there. Jason Kelsey and Jason Peters.
A vocal teacher, Jeff Stoutland.
Indeed. Those two guys right there, 62 and 71, critical that they are on the same page 100% of the time. And then Lane Johnson as well. A new look right side of the offensive line for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, it's a new world. It was pretty cool. One of the big takeaways for me from the practice yesterday was That was our first time from the media being able to see all those guys on the field together lining up. Seeing number 71 line up at right guard, Andre Dillard at left tackle, Sayamalo at left guard. Kelsey was off the previous day, so having him back was great. It's pretty cool to be able to see that group together for the first time.
And we take a look at Darren Sproles. He has been here the entire way, working on kickoff coverage, punt returns, kickoff returns, helping out a lot with Jalen Reagor. We saw him catching a whole lot of punts yesterday. And there's none better. If the Eagles can manufacture some positive returns from a kick return game that really wasn't explosive, hasn't really been the last couple of years here, Fran, you can really turn a game around.
Yeah, it's a huge momentum swing. Whenever you can get a big play on special teams, those high leverage situations allow you to really kind of change the fortune of a game. I know there's a lot of data that's out there in terms of the win percentage, taking a huge spike if you have an X play in the return game, whether that's a blocked kick or a touchdown going the other way.
And I think that fans have to understand this. You generally have maybe one or two or three players earn jobs in the preseason, in a lot of cases because of special teams.
Yep.
Because you don't tackle live on kicks at training camp. So I'm interested to see how the Eagles make that determination, who your core special teams players are. And even beyond that, without tackling, I can't imagine, Fran, that even when they go live here, I just don't see them tackling on kickoffs or punts.
That would be really interesting to be able to watch and see. And all 32 teams are going to kind of approach that a little bit differently. And Doug Peterson has said, look, when we do go live, it'll only be for a couple of periods here and there, and that's a good strategy. And then there's other people that will go the opposite way, and they'll hit all day, all night. So it'll be very interesting to see how all 32 teams decide to approach it with this unique offseason.
How hungry, Eagles fans, do you think DeSean Jackson is to get back on the field in 2020? Had that electrifying first game against Washington at Lincoln Financial Field, 51-yard touchdown catch, 53-yard touchdown catch, 8 catches in all, 154. We were expecting just enormous things from number 10. And then a week later, limps off the field against the Atlanta Falcons and really was not a factor the rest of the season. At age 33, there are people who doubt DeSean Jackson. So I think that he's spoken the truth in the offseason. We spoke about it on the Eagles Insider podcast. His shoulder, the size of the chip on that shoulder, Fran. For a guy who, when people count you out, I think he's somebody who just really, really responds to that kind of challenge.
I mean, he had that from the moment he got into the league, too. I mean, even as a second-round pick, I know that was something that motivated him early in his career. Him leaving Philadelphia and then wanting to come back, certainly improve himself. The best. I mean, if you watch the Michael Jordan documentary, always find some way to motivate themselves going into each year, going into each week.
The linebacker position, as we take a look at Nathan Gary on the left, Duke Riley on the right. Nathan Gary, a 5th-round draft pick, 2017. Last year, 2 interceptions, ranked 3rd in tackles, and also led the Eagles in special team snaps. The kid played all the time, really made that transition from is he good enough to play in the NFL to a solid starter.
Yeah.
But the linebacker position, Fran, let's be honest, a lot to prove here. A lot of unheralded players.
It's one of those things where you're really interested to see the development of some of these young guys because obviously, look, the guy on the right, Davion Taylor, young 3rd-round pick. How much defense is he going to play this year? That's up in the air. But then you look at Nate Gary. You look at T.J. Edwards, who was an undrafted free agent, who was still kind of finding his way last year at this time. Why can't he step into the role that of a Nigel Bradham and play that same role with a very similar kind of skill set? I was a big fan of T.J. Edwards. I'm really excited to see him in year 2.
I just find it amazing that in 2020, Nathan Gary is 230 pounds.
Right.
Duke Riley is 224 pounds, and they're playing linebacker. And there's a player that we want to focus on here for the next couple of days. Critical time for last year, number 57 overall in the NFL draft, 2nd-round draft pick, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. 10 catches, 1 touchdown. Certainly hoped to be more productive. Worked very hard in this offseason. In fact, was recognized by the Eagles strength and conditioning staff for his off-season work in the virtual program. Fran, what are you looking for from J.J. Arcega-Whiteside? All of a sudden, there's 3 draft picks. DeSean Jackson's back. Alshon Jeffrey, we hope, will be back for the opener. Where does J.J. fit in?
Well, that was what I was most interested to see once he returned from that injury. And he came back yesterday to the practice field. Where was he going to be on the pecking order? Well, he was with the first team, and he was working alongside DeSean Jackson and Greg Ward. So interested to see now that the action kind of ticks up a little bit here with the pads coming back on. I'm excited to see him out there on the field today.
All right, let's talk about this drill that the wide receivers are running. Everybody's always so interested in the wide receivers. This is getting off the line of scrimmage, lowering your shoulder, and then getting your eyes around for the pass that's coming over your left shoulder.
Yeah, the big thing early on, you can see they're running around that big pad there. You're trying to reduce the surface area for the cornerback to be able to hit. If you come off high and expose your chest, they're going to jam you and keep you off your release and throw off the timing. That's what these guys, the coaching point for those guys early is try and really dip the shoulder, get downfield, and then you're going to look the ball in down the field. Beautiful day out.
Sure is. 2020 Philadelphia Eagles training camp here at the NovaCare Complex. Dave Spadaro, Eagles Insider. Fran Duffy, host of the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast and Journey to the Draft. It'll be an odd journey for college football this year to the draft.
An odd journey, without question. Hopefully, some kind of college football we can all talk about and enjoy this year.
And I believe the Eagles will keep, historically 5 wide receivers, right? So you've got DeSean, Alshon, Greg Ward, Jalen Reagor, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, Wes Watkins,
young guys,
John Hightower. By my count, that's 7.
Yeah, all the young guys that made plays for them last year down the stretch. It's going to be a fun couple weeks at this position, man. A lot of guys with a stake to claim.
I'm going to miss preseason games. I've already missed preseason games. I loved preseason games. I love seeing young players fight for roster spots. As great as practice is and as intense as it can be, it just doesn't fully replicate the bright lights, the intensity, the importance of a preseason game.
It's going to make the build up to week 1 just all that more tough to be able to wait for, right? Because we usually will get the preseason games to kind of wet our beak a little bit as football fans. We're not going to get that this year. So that build-up to week 1 against Washington is going to be something else.
Did you say wet our beak?
Yeah, wet our beak a little bit.
Eagles.
Yeah, exactly. Trying to stick with it.
New wide receivers coach, Aaron Moorhead.
Good presence with those guys.
And that'll do it for this coverage here. We are back on Sunday with more live stream coverage of Eagles Training Camp 2020 presented by Independence Blue Cross. Everyone, Dave Spadaro, Fran Duffy, thanks so much for joining us. Have yourselves a great Eagles day. Fly, Eagles, fly, and stay with us on PhiladelphiaEagles.com, our official app, and our social media channels as we cover this camp wall to wall.